Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Jensen program. Joining you from central sunny Florida, I'm Brett Jensen. And from the lovely Pacific Northwest, my brother Eric Jensen is joining us as well. Welcome. We're glad to have you tune in to another great discussion. We're going to dig right in to college football. Let's go ahead and bring up the map of what was formerly known as the Pac-12 Conference. We have Washington State, Oregon State, Cal Stanford, USC, UCLA, Arizona State, and the most recent additions have been Utah and Colorado. Now, it's like it's become the Pac-4 with only Washington State, Oregon State, Cal, and Stanford remaining. Everyone else has gone either to the Big Ten or the Big 12 conferences. So a huge shakeup in college football alignments. But so the question is, when did this start? How did this happen? What do you think?
I think we can blame Larry Scott for this. It's starting all the way back then when the Pac-10 at the time brought in a guy that knew nothing about college athletics in the slightest, put all the money and all the headquarters to himself in the Bay Area, so sucking money themselves, and then just decision after decision after decision didn't focus on what really matters in college sports, which is football.
Without football, there are no other sports. All of the budget for everything else depends on football. And they, got their hands tied up in other things.
And what is most important in football? It's your big brands in football. And what did they want to do? Have parity. Have no big brands. And so while there were big brands all over the country, and granted several schools, including USC, messed up themselves as good as they could as well, they got no help. And even like the good teams during this time, like Oregon or Washington, none of them were ever helped out, like scheduling wise or anything. It was all just, we're trying to have everyone together and sing Kumbaya as we dance around into our graves.
And you contrast that with exactly like how the Big Ten really rallied behind Ohio State when they were on top, and how the Big 12 really propped up Oklahoma and Texas. I mean, they had their championship games where Kansas State knocked one of them off a surprising number of times. But they did their best to help the bigger brands. And I mean, certainly the SEC has been very promotional of Alabama and LSU and Florida when they were on top, Tennessee when they were on top. They're
and
pushing their big brands.
It's even just a scheduling thing of, let's not make you play a Friday or Thursday game away and then another away game, so you have no time to practice. And that's what they would always do. They just stack these impossible weeks together where you could literally look at the schedules for most of the Pac-12 teams and say, oh, there's a loss, just from a scheduling point of view.
And how many times were one of those teams banged up? And not just USC. They talk about that at the end of the season almost all the time in the West. Well, a lot of these teams are really banged up. And of course, what does that do? Produces more losses in the postseason. And what does that do? Hurt the conference as a whole. Then there's less desire to be a part of a conference that isn't competing in these championships. It was a disaster for a long time.
But the Pac-12 had every possibility to fix it. Right when they were starting to look at expansion, they had Texas, they had Oklahoma on board, Oklahoma State. They had all these schools that were ready to join the Pac-12 and make it a big super conference, the first one, which would have solidified the Pac-12 even to today. And they decided, no, we don't want that. And instead, we just got Utah and Colorado, which are fine, but not Oklahoma or Texas bringing in money into the conference.
Agree. I also still think, I mean, even though BYU may not seem like a big money thing, the way that they approached BYU with a lot of these schools, especially the University of California, just turning up their noses, we're morally superior to all of you people who might believe in Jesus. There's a lot of football fans who actually believe in Jesus. And when you turn them off, that's not a good thing. And you see that through their advertisement campaign on the Pac-12 network, where they just have these woke things. The difference is how diverse we are. Meantime, the SEC just shows their logo and wins games. And it's like, maybe we could have done something a little different there. Maybe our priorities should have been less on these political causes and more on what people actually are following these sports for, to see the sports.
Yeah. But and then even now, again, a lot of the conference is all about money. Like USC, UCLA, why are they going to the Big Ten? Why did they go? For money. That's the only reason to go there, because it was increasing by a lot. But some of the schools and the Pac-12 itself, I mean, they valued themselves more than they were. They could have had a deal with ESPN for $30 million a year, and they thought they were better than that. They weren't.
Yeah.
And then you had like Oregon that the Pac-12 commissioner, his big play was to hold UCLA and get the California Board of Regents to hold UCLA, not let them go. But how they were going to do that was they were going to have UCLA make $50-some million a year, even if the other schools were not going to make as much. And like Oregon was not on board with that. They didn't want UCLA making more money than them, so they nixed that. Now fast forward, Oregon and Washington are joining the Big Ten and making that same amount of money less than USC and UCLA.
So, yeah, that brings up our map of the new Big Ten Conference. As of right now, I mean, tomorrow, who knows? Boise State? Nevada? No, I mean, anything's up. Anything's possible. Probably not, but...
Although the ones I do keep on hearing rumors, I mean, it's Twitter rumors, so who knows how real they are, but we know Florida State isn't happy, and Clemson can't be happy with the long-term and lack of money in their TV deals. So there is a lot of talk that the Big Ten might try and take some of those ACC schools too, but anyways.
Yeah. So, I mean, I remember when I first heard, because I knew that the Pac-12 had particularly, because USC had been on top, they had particularly done poorly by USC. And I mean, a lot of USC fans saw that the way that they handled the games, the way that they handled the scheduling, the way they handled the media, they really wanted to say, we're not just USC. Stop saying the Pac-12 is just USC. They wanted to have all of this other stuff, and they did it by, instead of making the others good, by trying to stab USC in the back a lot.
Yeah, the conference was overjoyed with the sanctions that USC had with the Reggie Bush stuff. I mean, overjoyed with that.
Which is a huge contrast from like the stuff that Ohio State got involved in, the stuff that Miami got involved in, like almost any of these other teams that have had these issues, Texas A&M, any of these, like it's just
brushed under the rug. And
yeah. Their people kind of stood by the team to help them, you know. But not USC. We got the raw end of that deal. So it was a little bit surprising that we went to the Big Ten. I was a little bit surprised by that. Like looking at the distance between like USC over here in Los Angeles and like Rutgers in New Jersey. Like, my goodness. Somebody was saying that the distance between Rutgers and Honduras was less than the distance between Rutgers and USC. That might be true. I don't know.
I also heard Oregon going over to Rutgers. That's only a half an hour less time than it would take to get to London from the East Coast. So I mean, we might as well start taking like Cambridge, and you know they have a college football team, right? Oxford.
And so like we're in a different time now. Obviously, it's spanning the whole country. And a lot of coaches have talked about that. If we look at like the map for the Big 12, of course, like it didn't take very long when Colorado was in talks and they knew that the media deals with the Pac-12 were not going well. Colorado already had been in the Big 12 and, you know, Deion Sanders thinks he's got a new thing going. And so, yeah, sure, we'll take you over in the Big 12. They had a Texas and Oklahoma shaped hole and they were eager to try and plug that. So, the Arizona schools picking up Utah, adding independent BYU. It actually looks like it'll be a good conference. I don't think that this is a bad setup for the Big 12.
I think the good thing with the Big 12, and any of these teams might benefit from it, there isn't any big blue blood powerhouse team in the Big 12 as it will be constituted. So one of these teams can become one.
Right.
They can dominate the conference and then be one of those that are constantly in the playoff.
And it's kind of interesting because each of these teams like kind of has some potential. Like Utah has had some great seasons. They are not a bad team. And they could really do something. BYU has surprised a lot of people in what they've been able to accomplish with the tools that they have. We have absolutely no idea what's going to happen with Colorado, and it still cracks me up, their situation. But they do have at least a past of something.
They do. They have some good past, and they have Deion.
K-State infamously knocking off Oklahoma every time the Big 12 has a championship game. TCU in the playoff previously, they've had some good teams. Baylor, Houston, almost every one of those. UCF, who not just won a national championship, they declared that they had won. They declared themselves national champions. West Virginia, though, Cincinnati, all of these teams have had like some good things. Oklahoma State. I mean, and then there's Kansas.
Well, even Kansas, for 1 year, they were up in the top 10 back in 2008.
That's true, yeah. When they had that really big guy as their head coach.
Mark Mangina? No.
I know it was after Charlie Weiss, or maybe it was before Charlie Weiss.
No, it was before Charlie Weiss.
That's right. Charlie Weiss came in after.
He came in after and was still bad.
But that's kind of these big nationwide conferences seem to be like the thing. And a lot of coaches have talked about this phenomenon with that's really good for football, but for everything else, that's kind of bad. There's like football revenue is a little bit different because it sustains all of the other programs. And so it's probably worth it to go and to have national meetings, and this is good for football, but less so for almost all the other sports. So,
and I know
is there a solution to this?
There is a solution, not that it's one that anyone would use. It would be you have these super conferences in football, either as they're sort of constituted, or if a few more break away, and then you have maybe two big super conferences or whatnot, or two or three of those. But then everything else, all the other sports, should just be in the regional old whatever. I mean, how often are we really putting on, the women's softball on the on these other networks or on the big networks? I mean, they play them, but not all that often. And like USC and many of the teams on the West Coast, they all are not a part of the Pac-12 in like water polo or things like that. They have their own little regional conference of California schools and stuff that is there. And so I think that's the smartest way, because it's going to be hard if you're bouncing here and there. Even basketball, where you're going, 2 games a week, it's crazy.
It's a lot of travel for that. That's a lot of travel, and that's not cheap. And it's, I mean, I get it. Basketball can do a little bit more, but even then, the number of games for that distance, that seems like a lot. And so, yeah, one of the propositions was maybe it's time for football to leave the NCAA entirely and do their own thing. What do you think about that?
I actually don't think that's a bad idea in the long run. I mean, I think we're still a little bit of time before it gets to that point, but we already don't have an NCAA championship. When you win the national championship, it's not, you don't get the NCAA championship trophy like you do in every other sport. It's you get the Dr. Pepper championship trophy or whatever it is, or it was the BCS crystal ball. So they're already almost separating themselves off. If I mean, it's almost would be smart to have the upper division of Division I teams and the lower division of 1AA, formerly 1AA, FC, not FCS, but the Power 5 and Group of 5.
Yeah.
Which again, those numbers are varying because one of those is the Pac-4 now, but not much of a Power 5 conference and when you only have 4 teams in it.
Yeah, that's they're done. Although, like, there are proposals for recruiting other schools into the Pac-4.
I've seen trying to take the best of the Mountain West and the best of the American Conference and sort of merge that, is what the recent things that I've been seeing to bolster the Pac-4.
I just don't think that's enough. I just don't think that's enough.
I agree.
And yeah, you had talked about the ACC. This is the other one that's kind of in jeopardy. And you're right. Who do they have there? And it was kind of interesting to me because the ACC really felt like they had solidified their place when they raided the old Big East Conference of Boston College and Syracuse and especially Miami. That was a big thing. Florida State was a huge power. Miami was incredible. And
And
then
Virginia Tech was really good with
Virginia
Michael Vick
Tech.
then as well.
And so they gathered all of those together, and they all kind of diminished. Except in basketball, I guess they still.
And again, the problem with the ACC is they've got like an 18-year television deal that isn't paying them much money and cost $1 billion or however much it is to get out. And so, I mean, they're going to just fall behind if some of these bigger schools don't get out. Like Florida State, Miami, they're not going to be able to keep up with anyone from the Big Ten or the SEC.
Yeah.
With the money they're making.
Yep. So you've got to think something else is coming. Something has got to change with these nation-sized conferences. That's just, it's kind of ridiculous. You can say the SEC is still kind of regional. This is going to be the SEC. And they are sort of in that region. You could say that that's still regional, but
it's a
nothing
big region.
else. And even then, it's a big region to go from.
In comparison to what conferences used to be with the Big Eight, the Southwest Conference, it's pretty big.
Yeah, they're large regions. You're right. Yeah. Yeah, kind of interesting. I mean, this is the same sort of nonsense that, like, the WAC ran into trouble with. And, I mean, some of the others, like with SMU getting the death penalty, that was kind of the end of the SWAC at that time, and they were just gobbled up by everybody nearby. So that was a little bit different. But, like, the WAC just decided, hey, you're in the West, come and join us. And so some of the bigger teams that were out there said, this is not serving us to have to go to Rice and do that. And they formed the Mountain West. And that was like, I mean, they weren't considered necessarily one of the power conferences, but they still they competed on the national stage.
Yeah, they had Utah, they had TCU, BYU that all did well there in the Mountain West.
And then same thing. That conference did not do right by their top schools that were bringing in most of the audience and the attention, and so they left. Utah, BYU, TCU, they all took off. And I think it worked out well for all three of those schools, honestly.
Yeah.
There should have been some lessons for the Pac-12, like, oh yeah, maybe if you take care of your teams, that will benefit you.
Or don't think you're better than everyone else and bring in some assets.
Right.
But again, they were too high and mighty. They were worth too much until they weren't, because USC wasn't there.
and as much as I, the one thing that I think I will miss the most that surprises me is watching what's his face, Bill Walton or whatever, who do basketball announcing. What a character he was. Of course, this UCLA guy, but he's always like every other 5 minutes in this conference of champions. I mean, think about all of these people, and he's like going off about stuff nobody cares about. But there was, like, when you did look at all of the NCAA championships for all sports, Stanford is on top by a significant amount. And not far behind USC and UCLA. And not far behind them, actually, Cal.
Yep.
As these California schools have won a lot of championships in a lot of things. And so there is a little bit of a sad note of it was fun to compete against these guys. I really loved when we beat Cal. It was painful, those like in 2002, the overtime, triple overtime loss. That was painful, and it was so rewarding when we beat what's his face,
Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers in the Coliseum right at the end. Oh, that was so rewarding.
Yeah, it's sad, and the two schools I feel bad about in all this conference realignment is the Oregon State and Washington State, because they're actually very good athletic schools. They're good. They just don't bring in enough money, and they're just left out to dry, which is unfortunate when you have some schools like Rutgers that are in the Big Ten, or Vanderbilt in the SEC, and you're like, well, Washington State and Oregon State, I'd put them above them. But
yeah. I mean, they had moments, each of them, where they had really good production. They were dangerous to play. You got Mike Leach out in Washington State, and he could surprise people. He did that at Texas Tech. He did it at Washington State. He did it at Mississippi State. And Oregon State as well was just like these surprising sudden defensive stands that we weren't prepared for, and these little running backs that somehow dodge all your guys. We had some unexpected and painful defeats in Corvallis.
Yeah.
And yeah, you don't really have that with Vanderbilt or honestly Missouri anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do? All right. Well, that's a good chunk of time talking about college football. I am super excited to see what shakes out this season. Last season of the Pac-12. I'm obviously excited about Trojan football that is coming very soon. It's going to be phenomenal. I can't wait.
I keep on getting more and more optimistic, so hopefully they do good.
Yeah, I mean, even on the defense too. Like I think we could see some big improvements, because that was what killed us last season. I'm feeling good. Good. All right, let's talk about Marvel. Let's talk about Marvel Cinematic. The Marvel Cinematic Universe. So there's no doubt, when I first watched Iron Man, which I think a lot of people mark as like, that's really what opened up the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You could say it's not the first Marvel Studios thing, that they were involved with like Hulk before that, or some of the others, but that's really the beginning of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It's the one that started with Marvel Studios.
Yeah.
So with them doing their own stuff, yeah.
They did
not
the whole
just the Marvel
thing.
brand.
Yeah. And it was so good. I loved Iron Man. I thought it was so entertaining. The way that Tony Stark's character kind of changed from the beginning, and then he saw what was going on, and that rattled him, and how he then said, well, I can't just be trusting whoever. It's up to me. I've got this. I'll make it work. And there was a determination that he showed. You know, his heart's not working. He's going to make it work anyway. And he's going to show that. It was great. It was entertaining. And it wasn't preaching to me about how, you know, I have the wrong political views. It wasn't preaching to the other side either, about how they had the wrong political views. It was just a good story and entertaining. And we saw, I think, similar things with Captain America, with the original Thor, with that opening, and then culminating in that first Avengers movie, which was incredibly entertaining. And I think that even then, afterwards, you could say you like some better than others. Iron Man 2, not my favorite.
Not the best, but...
Iron Man 3 either. I, but certainly Captain America, Captain America 2,
Yeah.
they were good movies. They were entertaining. Avengers Age of Ultron was not maybe my favorite, but it was still entertaining. I enjoyed watching it.
Well, and they did do an amazing job actually fitting together. Like
Right.
it was somewhat believable that yeah, this could be together. As crazy as that sounded, but
Even though they were totally like separately directed and written, they had like an overarching theme, a plan, which is something that like, the Star Wars sequels couldn't manage. Like, what are we going to do next? I don't know. Throw darts at a dartboard with plot
I,
points on it.
it would have been better if that's what they were doing. uh,
And so, and it really culminated for me in Endgame, Avengers Endgame. I really enjoyed that. I
see,
loved those.
to me, I agree. Like I thought the Infinity War, I think that's one of the best ones.
Yeah.
And then Endgame, well, I enjoyed it. I think it's a great movie and whatnot, but I think that's where the problems start, is sort of in Endgame. And most everything up to this point in their movies, they were continuing to build and make sense. The not going back to where he, instantly, took everyone out in the blip or whatnot, but keeping that 5 year span, it's made, I mean, they've done some interesting things with it, but it also, I think, has made it a big struggle as well to fit everything back together since then.
Well, that's true. They've really, and like, because part of it, you as somebody outside of the Marvel story who's just looking at it, Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson, they've been in these films for years doing these roles. And that's like a lot of contractual pressure for them to stay in certain shape, live certain lifestyles. And so it was okay for me that they said, we've got to let him go. and and I think the way that they kind of did that was a good way, but it was clear as a part of Endgame they were building up to that, and there was not really a plan to connect that to anything else in a meaningful way.
Mm-hmm.
And they've pulled other things just out of the back of their pants for the blip and Captain Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, which and some of their stuff has worked okay with the blip and whatnot. I think the Loki television series that worked.
Yeah.
But then yeah, there were some like the Captain America Winter Soldier or Falcon and Winter Soldier that not really, and a lot of it is that 5 year gap that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So have you seen some of these? So this is the Phase 5 kind of stuff. This is a more recent thing. I did enjoy the newest Spider-Man, where they kind of did. That was really entertaining. I thought that was well done. For Phase 4. Did not really like the Eternals. I thought that was... They had a lot of unlikable characters.
It was all unlikable characters almost. I mean, it was entertaining enough to get through the movie, but after the movie, you were like, I don't care about a single one of these people. And again, it didn't feel connected to anything either. There's a giant, what is it? A giant eternal guy that's stone that's coming out of half of the earth, and then no one else notices ever.
Yeah. It was a little bit, and I mean, I understand they're trying to set it up for they're trying to build the Galactus or whatever, as they need another really big bad guy now that they've taken care of Thanos, but it was not the greatest way to introduce him. And then, I mean, some of these others, Ant-Man and the Wasp, I was actually, I didn't mind it. It wasn't as bad as I was expecting, because I heard from a lot of people like it's a disaster. I regret watching that. I'd like to spoon my own eyeballs out after having seen it. And it wasn't to that level, but it certainly wasn't nearly as good as the previous Ant-Man or Ant-Man and the Wasp. Those were much more entertaining. And this lost a little of the Paul Rudd humor. And
yeah, it wasn't fun.
Right. Yeah, and they tried to replace that with this bizarre universe that you were inside of. It was not a replacement. It didn't work. It was weird. Yeah. And again, with the blip, there were weird things with that. I mean, and I understand that they're, again, trying to build up towards Kang, but it was, I mean, I don't know. So, looking at what's coming up, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Have you seen that?
No, I still need to watch it. I know it's on Disney Plus now, so I just have to sit down and watch it now. I want to, I just haven't pulled the time out yet.
I enjoyed it. It had entertaining moments. It wasn't my favorite of the Guardians of the Galaxy, but I enjoyed it. It was entertaining. I'm not going to say, oh, what a disaster, they've ruined it, because I don't think they have. And this was another, like, saying goodbye to the Guardians of the Galaxy, it felt like. So it was okay. The Marvels, I don't know a single person who is interested in seeing this. I think I know more people who are excited for the Snow White remake than this.
I don't know about that. Yeah, I mean, and this, as someone that really enjoys the character, well, the old character Miss Marvel that went to Captain Marvel, yeah, I'm not. It looks, I mean, it looks like they have an interesting idea, but I don't think anyone is looking forward to it. And again, and here's one of the issues that's coming up with this. Like, if you haven't watched all of the Miss Marvel series on Disney Plus, you're not going to know what's going on. As opposed, and you also need to have watched, all, 50 hours of previous Marvel films too, which I've mainly done, but but a lot of people haven't, and so there's a disconnect there. You don't care about these characters really. And the first Captain Marvel film, it didn't make you care too much about Carol Danvers.
That's a key point. She was not a likable person. It was.
As opposed to most of the other, like, original Phase 1 ones, you cared about Iron Man, you cared about Captain America, you cared about Thor. And you're not with most of these that they're putting in now.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that certainly... Deadpool 3, I haven't seen any of the Deadpools. It's probably going to contain some things that are entertaining. I've seen the screenshots of Hugh Jackman and the yellow Wolverine thing. That would probably be entertaining. There's just a little bit too much crap in there for me to...
Yeah. Do I want to see the Deadpool movies? Yeah, I would want to, but no. That would need to be heavily edited.
Right, yeah. A little too much for me. Captain America Brave New World. This seems like this is going to be the new Captain America based on what we saw in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Not looking forward to this.
No.
If he's just going to fly around and tell senators that people look up to you, you need to fix our problems. I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine Steve Rogers doing that? I'm gonna run up to Congress and say, you need to be better role models. What the heck? He went out and did stuff himself.
Yeah, he went out and punched Hitler himself.
Right, God.
No, and again, it's does anyone care about the Falcon? The only reason why anyone somewhat cared about him a little bit was he was Steve Rogers' friend.
Yep.
Well, we've removed Steve Rogers, so we don't care about him.
Yeah, that's very true. Thunderbolts. I think I know almost nothing about that. Is this something I should?
Boat. No, I'm in the same boat. Yeah, I need to brush up on my encyclopedia for the Thunderbolts here, but yeah, no.
And then they're coming out with Blade, I guess minus Wesley Snipes probably because he was so unlikable. I mean, sure, go ahead, introduce vampires and stuff. Worked out really well with Morbius. Why not here?
Well, they could have a Twilight blockbuster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The things that they've announced for the subsequent phase, Fantastic Four, which they've done the opening story of Fantastic Four enough that if they do that again, I think that's going to be a mistake. Kind of like with Spider-Man, when they introduced him into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they didn't tell his origin story, really. He was already Spider-Man, and he had this adventure, then they threw in the Vulture. He was already living with Aunt May. I think that served them well.
I agree. I
hope they take that approach with Fantastic Four.
And here's where I think that you can start doing something really good is because they are some good characters there in the Fantastic Four, and if you can do Doom right, I mean, there's not many villains that are better than Doom, who refers to himself in the third person constantly.
So we know Elmo is evil. Then we have Avengers, the Kang Dynasty, and Avengers Secret Wars. So this looks like they're building up again to this next climax, which, I think the way that they handled it in the Loki series was really enjoyable. I kind of enjoyed that. The way that they had him in Ant-Man and the Wasp, less so. And so it'll be interesting to see. And they have when they have this multiverse concept, they aren't really bound to keep him a certain way. They really could do some different things. So there's opportunity for them to pick things back up and kind of make things work again.
Yeah, the issue coming into that one is you're going to have a bunch of characters, and does anyone care about them?
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, I still like Thor. Are they going to bring him back and have him do some more stuff, even though his last film was just okay at best? But I mean, the heroes side of things, that and here's what my solution is to help Marvel on, is they need to go back and sort of just scrap. I don't care if you say one of these just blows up the multiverse and shatters it, and we just are going to go to another multiverse and see what's going on there, or some universe there. and just sort of start over. You can have some X-Men character movies, or you can have a Fantastic Four, or whatever you're doing, but start it from scratch.
Yeah.
And we need to just move past the entire catalog now.
So the other question is there a role for the X-Men?
Well, the X-Men is the best property in all of comic books, in my opinion.
Agree. I still remember even like that opening theme song of the 90s cartoon. It was epic. Everybody loved it. We were excited to go home on Saturday and watch the X-Men. And the way that they did the various sides, they made it a rich thing, even for the 90s, where you didn't get a whole lot of depth in cartoons. They were interesting characters. You wanted to follow them. The villains were really crazy and out there and threatening. And the way that they approached things had to be balanced. It was a fascinating dynamic. I loved it.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind even doing, this is because I do like the X-Men a lot, but doing individual X-Men guys, doing a movie on certain ones or a couple of them, and then having a joint sort of Avengers, but this is the X-Men as they come together. So have a Wolverine, have a Cyclops movie, have a Colossus movie or Nightcrawler or something, and then have it come together and fight Apocalypse or something.
And I tell you, that's
good one.
that was one of the things that was so disappointing about the Fox thing when they finally came back to Apocalypse, and it's that's how we're doing it. It was so anticlimactic. It was
which is sad because that 90s cartoon has done a better job. They did a better Dark Phoenix than anywhere else saga. They've done a better Apocalypse thing than anywhere else. I mean, most of the stuff that they did is better than anything they've done in films, which is why I'm excited that they're continuing that cartoon series.
Yeah. That should be good. That'll be interesting. All right. Well, last little bit of our program. I'd like to talk a little bit on a church-related subject. One of the things that was very nice for me when I was very, very young was going to primary, and after I'd sat through listening to somebody give some talk for, who knows how long, I could at least sit down in a chair and do something, participate when I was a very little kid, and having some music was a good thing to do. It was just fine when I was 5. But by the time I was 7, I was done with that. And I think part of the issue that I've recognized as I've kind of gotten older, little girls still enjoy these primary songs. They like sitting still, and they've got a nice song, and it teaches a happy message, and they can say, oh, I'll help you, you'll help me, we'll be happy as can be. And for a little boy who's 9, 10, that's not doing it anymore. And so what do you get in that situation? You get people who just the little boys start to be rambunctious, and then you get some Karen who's snapping at him, and it's a miserable experience for everybody. I don't think it's limited to just primary, but I mean, if you don't walk as most people do, some people walk away from you, but I won't. Little boys do not want this. I didn't want this. And I remember when I was in a primary class and it was taught by the bishop was substituting at the time, Bishop Pearson. I don't know if you remember the Pearson.
I do.
He came in and he gave a lesson where he talked about like some doctrinal principles that I just hadn't heard in primary. And I remember being blown away, and I was like, wow, I've learned something. And that like ignited a desire to know more. And then I go into this other room and it's these little nothing songs meant to control my behavior. It was so difficult. I think that part of the issue is a lot of the programs in the church are run, not necessarily designed, I don't think designed, but run in a way that caters to things that are good for girls and not necessarily good for men and boys. And I think that it starts there at the end in primary for boys. That's a really painful time to be a boy, is when you're like 10 or 11 and stuck in those primary rooms. Did you have a similar experience? Is that just me?
Well, I remember just, even though I was a June birthday, being the youngest one in the class, and so everyone else was leaving and going to deacons, and then I was just all by myself there in primary. And yeah, that was like, oh, well, here I am again.
Yeah, I had a later birthday in the year, but I was in the similar position. Everybody else had moved on, and I was still there in primary. It was painful, absolutely painful. And Young Men was a great experience. I had leaders who really gave a lot to try and make good experiences for young men. It was a good thing for me. And then you leave Young Men and you go to Elders Quorum, and it's like, is this something that is designed to help men? I mean, you come in and you get some guy who was maybe thumbing through a manual during sacrament meeting, and maybe he circled a couple of things and he's just going to say, who wants to read this paragraph? Somebody reads it. Oh yeah, I really liked that. Who wants to read this one? And that's it. And that doesn't promote the kind of things that men need to spiritually thrive. Like, I don't know if that's been your experience in elders quorums or not.
Yeah, for the most part. I've been in primary and young men for a lot, and just recently have been going back to elders quorum, and I'm longing to go back to young men. Even though they have attention spans of maybe 5 seconds, and with that, you didn't get into any deep doctrine a lot of the time, especially because I was with deacons for a lot. It was still something there. Whereas, yeah, I go in the elders quorum sometimes, and I mean, there are some that are better than others, but there's a lot of times when I'm just like, okay, let's do something here.
Yeah, and it's not that we can't have music. There are songs. I mean, I remember when we used to have priesthood sessions in general conference, and President Nelson had recently been called to be president of the church, and he wanted everybody to stand up and sing, "Come all ye sons of God." And there was a feeling that you got when everybody was standing and singing this, who have received the priesthood. There was a power, and it would be nice if we could access that power in our programs.
Well, and I think that like the times that we get the most, like as an elder quorum or whatnot, is it's when you're actually going out there and serving someone for the most part. Someone needs help, even if it's like a move or heaven forbid, we were in a like a disaster zone. Not, I say disaster zone. It was just a really gross place that we were having to move. So gross that I did throw up. But you know, you get in there and you're working hard and there's a good spirit there. Like if you go and take that to sacrament, or not sacrament maybe, but elders quorum, like no, we're not going to be like lifting a bunch of stuff in elders quorum, but we don't have to dance around topics or whatnot. You can get into some good things, and there are most elders quorums and most they have some people that can know a whole lot and can really give some good things if we actually do more than you know this person said blah 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 blah, what do you think about this? Well, I think it's good. If you're actually digging into something and into topics that are deeper, and then I think that's where an elder quorum can grow together. But then I think you also have to have that outside too. I mean, you're
You
not
have
going
to
to
have all. Yeah, that's
yeah, you're not gonna open up or dig deep in with a bunch of people that you don't know or don't do anything with.
if your association is limited to an hour every couple of weeks, that's not going to be a brotherhood. And so, yeah, I like to see, and I know that's hard for some elders quorums to manage, but boy, you'd love to see. It was Elder L. Tom Perry, before he passed away, talked about the things that priesthood quorums should accomplish. They should be a teaching organization, so you should have meaningful instruction, a service organization, so you should be able to rally and help somebody that needs, and a fraternity, that people need some masculine belonging, not just, my kids are going here, my wife wants to go here. Men need a place to belong. And I worry that too many of our programs are being run in a way where they kind of have a form of godliness but deny the power thereof, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
We have an opportunity to really make that a lot more than it was, and that it has been. But,
Yeah, it's a tough thing, and the hardest thing about it is actually getting people to do something. And it's I don't know how to fix that, but it's well, on the primary thing. I do have to say my primary, they've got an elder in there who. An elder, I mean, he's older than me, but he actually engages. He gets into character. He's playing games. They're all up and down and whatnot, which is good most of the time. Sometimes some of the kids, we have a lack of discipline in our place, but for the most part, at least it's engaging, and so that works out well. And I think it's just that engagement. You've got to have people that are willing to be engaged.
Yeah.
And more than just, like you said, just sitting there smiling. It doesn't work as well.
100%. 100%. Well, that's gonna wrap up our time. Thank you everyone for joining in. We will do this again next month and bring some more exciting conversation. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next month.